Welcome to Lunch and Learn. Our topic today is Cost to be the Boss, Lessons in Leadership. And we have with us today Xavier Williams, the new CEO of American Virtual Cloud Technology. And prior to his current position, in fact, he was installed this month, he was a 30-year veteran with AT&T, in positions such as sales, marketing, global operations, product development, human resources. And just to give you an idea of, the type of position that Xavier held there, his last position before becoming CEO of AVCT was president of public sector, where he provided solutions for government, schools, universities, and FirstNet, the $40 billion broadband network for first responders. So we have a great guest with us, so grab your meal, kick back, and listen to this riveting conversation. Xavier, thank you for being here.
Hey, Derek, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is a real treat. We've talked in the past, but congratulations on your new position, making a transition. And first question is, how does it feel to leave home after 30 years?
Oh, wow. It was a trying experience, but it was time to go. I got the proverbial offer I couldn't refuse put in front of me. No regrets in a day that I spent at AT&T, but look forward to building and taking on the next challenge.
Wow. And what a challenge. NASDAQ 100 company, now running a, obviously AT&T was a public company, but now you are at the helm of a publicly traded company. So in terms of that transition, what are the pressures that you have now that you didn't have as a division president at AT&T?
Yeah, so AVC Technologies, publicly traded on NASDAQ. A lot more responsibility dealing with the board of directors, obviously, shareholders, capital allocation, things of that nature, where at AT&T being a divisional president was very much focused on execution and delivery. The AVCT role, setting enterprise strategy, trying to drive the culture for the entire organization and making sure that the things that we're doing are going to have a ripple effect on the stock price. At the end of the day, we're trying to grow enterprise value in the stock market.
So does it become more challenging looking at the quarterlies versus being part of the...
That would be one of the things that we're dealing with. And I mean, all jokes aside, with Sarbanes-Oxley and a lot of the SEC rules, myself and our CFO, we have to attest to a lot of things to make sure that we're doing things above board. So not to say that you don't have those responsibilities as a division president or something like that, but it's now you're the one that is signing those attestations. So it's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a bit about how your career journey to get you to this position right here. You grew up in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Mother was an educator. Your father was an entrepreneur. And like to say, he was an entrepreneur, actually CEO of a BE100s company, Clean Right, janitorial services. So, his being an entrepreneur, you working for your father, what led you to go the corporate path as opposed to the entrepreneurial path?
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. My father, his company was on the inaugural list of BE100 companies. Growing up in DC, he did a lot of business with the federal government, so cleaning federal government buildings. And over the years, I was fortunate enough to have to clean buildings myself. And it was very interesting. And I always view it as sort of a bad analogy, but it paints a picture. What was one of the downfalls of the mafia? The next generation, they encourage their kids to become lawyers and senators and all that different type of stuff. So what's the first thing my father tells me to do is go work in a corporation. Now, that being said, I always wanted to, in in an entrepreneurial venture or a smaller business like I am now. And the idea was in corporate America at these large companies, you can learn things at scale and then go apply them in other areas. So one of the things I always did try to do in my career is approach it like I was a corporatepreneur and taking roles that were a little risky, but provided the opportunity to really have an entrepreneurial bent on what we did.
Well, so you took the best of both worlds in terms of
I tried to.
Yeah. So at AT&T, you took on a number of different roles.
Mm-hmm.
Was that intentional or by serendipity?
It was very intentional. We always talk about a career as a marathon and not a sprint. But one thing I like to try to point out to people is there are a lot of sprints in that marathon. And it's how do you develop skills that could help you put tools in your tool belt, help you grow your career. So when I started my career, I always had a 5-year plan on what I was trying to accomplish, what skills I was trying to add, how do I make sure that I'm building a career that's going to allow me to be a general manager and to be able to run a business. So I started my career in finance, moved into product management, moved into sales. From there, moved into operations, did a stint in HR, and was always trying to just increase my skill level and be able to approach and attack solving business problems with a multi-view aspect as opposed to this being a proverbial one-trick pony. Nothing wrong with that. That's just the path that I chose, is to try to do multiple things. Now, that being said, Derek, I mentioned I started off trying to do things on a 5-year increment. With advances in technology, I really started looking at things more at a 2 to 3 year time clip. And again, that's where the sprint comes in. 2 to 3 years goes like that. And being able to say, you know what, I'm going to go and get this specific skill, learn this specific thing in that 2 to 3 years was very important to my overall development.
So in terms of that marathon,
mm-hmm.
How did you deal with, setbacks?
Mm-hmm.
That's one piece of it. And then the second piece, you talked about disrupting your career now from 5 years to 2 to 3 years. Walk us through that process as well.
Yeah, so first and foremost, one of the things I always tried to do was take jobs that nobody else might not have wanted. So it was risky from that vantage point. But you knew if you achieved in it, you knew if you did well in it, you would get a lot more points for it. You would get credit for it. So one of the things that I was very conscious about was, you know what? I'm not going to hit a home run every time. I was very conscious of that. But that doesn't mean that you can't get on base, you can't steal a base and eventually score a run. So it was very conscious trying to make sure I did those types of things up front. Second thing is around, disrupting your own career. Whenever I got comfortable with something, it was time to move on because, comfort allows you to feel good about yourself. You start to relax and you don't push forward. So when I become about 80% proficient in something, I start trying to look for the next opportunity. I start asking about promotion, all those different types of things. And it's real important as the person that owns my own career that I take that advantage and be proactive and push myself to the next thing before someone else does it for me. So those are some of the lessons that I've learned over the years and try to apply as I continue to grow in my career.
Well, one of the challenges that African Americans and women have is that career ownership. They spend a lot of time on being proficient, on being excellent, but they don't do those things that position themselves for the next opportunity. So how should you go about positioning yourself, not only in terms of skills development, but in terms of creating a network, integrating yourself into the company culture, doing those, having those soft skills as well as the hard skills to propel yourself forward?
Yeah, so one of the things I would encourage everyone to think about is try to find a place where you could work where you feel comfortable in the culture. You want to be able to bring your authentic self to work every day. And if the culture matches who you are as a person, it's a lot easier to be that guy that you feel very comfortable about yourself, first and foremost. Secondly, build relationships. That's going to be the key thing to moving your career forward. Some of those relationships are going to be mentors, individuals that you know are engaged in your career, that you go to for advice, you go to and learn things from. But there's also a thing called an advocate. Those are the people that you might not know are really engaged in your career, but they talk positively about you. When there's an opportunity or a hard thing that needs to be done, they're the people that bring your name up and say, hey, give him or her that opportunity, because I know they'll be able to deliver. If you start working those things and be very intentional in what you're trying to do with your career, who you're spending your time with, who you're developing your relationships with, it'll pay back in spades over the years as you continue to grow in your career.
So in terms of your ascension, let's talk a bit about race, because a lot of times you have colleagues, you have managers that can't see beyond you as an African-American male. They may have preconceived notions. I guess these days they call it unconscious bias in terms of who you are. And regardless of how proficient you are, regardless of your networks and your advocates, that still can be a barrier to ascension. Share with our audience how you navigate through that process. How do you deal with that so that you can achieve your goals?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, and Derek, that's a great question. First of all, accept it as a reality. So first, this is, I always tell people this. My brother always beat me in Monopoly as a kid because he would be setting the rules as the game was going along. Once I figured out to ask him what are the rules of the game up front, I could be more competitive. So first of all, know that people have unconscious bias to them, and us included. So remember that all the time. And I tell people this all the time. I am a 6'5" black man. Guess who my best friends are? 6'5" black men. That's who I feel most comfortable with. So once you have that mindset, you start to approach things differently to say, okay, this person might have some preconceived notion about me. So what can I do to change that? How do I make sure I'm having a consistent, open dialogue with them about my capabilities as opposed to what they think they are? They know what they are. So you gotta step out and make sure people know who you are as an individual. Make sure they know what you bring to the table. So these are things that you have to own, and don't use unconscious bias or whatever you want to call it as an excuse. Because the thing is, everyone, and I'll tell a quick story. This is a very quick story. Early in my career, I worked in a 4-person office and we were doing finance work. There was an Italian male, there was an Irish male, and there was a white female. And there would be times where I had individual times with them. The Italian male would say to me, I don't think I'm ever going to make it in this company because my last name ends in a vowel. The Irish male would say to me, I don't know if I'm ever going to make it in this company because, I'm Irish and there are a lot more Italians running the company than that. And then the white female was, I'm never going to make it in this company because I'm a female. Well, that taught me a lesson very early. Everybody has some little voice in the back of their head that's saying why they can't make it. So it's can you overcome that? And how do you overcome it? And that's where communicating, making sure your mentors know what you want to do, making sure that you're delivering results at a high clip, that's table stakes. So those types of things can help overcome unconscious bias.
And you had talked to me about the fact of being fully vested in the culture. So if you have a company that is driven more by golf as an activity, are driven by, let's say, softball or what have you, you should fully engage in corporate activities so that you can break down the barriers and increase the dialogue, just as peer to peer.
You said it very well in that, and this goes back to try to find a company where you fit into culture. So if you think about it, what is the best way to get around unconscious bias? Let somebody get to know you and know you as a person. And if your company has people like to play golf on the weekends, people like to play tennis on the weekends, if there's a company softball team, if there's a company basketball team, you got to participate in those things so people can get to know you as an individual and not just a worker. Because at the end of the day, it is about relationships. Everybody's smart, everybody works hard. It's who are you comfortable with? Who are the people that you trust is going to allow you to continue to grow in your career?
Well, you made some good points in terms of positioning yourself in the company. Mm-hmm. Next step is, how do you ascend? And if you're looking at the C-suite, if you're looking at eventually becoming the CEO, mm-hmm. how do you get on that track? Mm-hmm. How do you avoid the traps that will deter you from that track?
Yeah. So first of all, results. You have got to deliver a high level of results if you want to ascend in a corporation, and don't expect points to be patted on the back just because you're delivering at a high clip. That's table stakes, first and foremost. When you start to ascend in the company, you need to be able to take a strategic view of where the company is going and how to drive those changes that are needed to be successful. So you have to know your company, you have to know the industry, you have to understand the economy and really the global economy, and be able to understand strategically, where do we have to go, how do we have to move it, and be able to articulate that to the people that are making decisions. So it's not just the C-suite in your company, it might be board members, it's individuals, and you got to be able to identify who are the decision makers, who are the drivers, who are the people that are making those decisions about who's going to be in the C-suite. Once you do that, make sure that you have your elevator pitch down, make sure that you're connected with these individuals, and make sure that they know who you are as an individual, because all of those things are very important. And when I talk about table stakes around delivering results, everybody's smart at the senior levels, everybody. So there's not going to be, I'm picking this person because they're smarter than the other person. Everybody's smart. Everybody delivers results. So what is the niche? What is the unique thing that you bring to the table that's going to allow you to differentiate yourself from others? And that's how you get around the politics. There's going to be politics everywhere. Either you can play in them, which you have to make sure you're attuned to what's going on. But in the exact same vein, you need to make sure you know what you bring to the table every day and deliver on those things. If you get caught up in the politics of stuff, that's where you're going to play every day, as opposed to trying to move your career forward. So while it's unavoidable, you're going to have to deal with it. Just know you control your own destiny around the results you deliver, the ability to understand where the company is going, having a point of view of where things are going and how to drive those changes and build those relationships accordingly to allow you to shine in the best way that you can.
Well, you're in the CEO seat, so you made it to that level, and you talked about, having that strategic focus. Mm-hmm. How do you maintain that strategic focus? How do you maintain the company's core value and culture when you're faced with what we're faced today, a pandemic, an unexpected, unprecedented event that has derailed our economy, that have derailed industries? How do you lead through that type of?
So first of all, you just said the key thing. You got to lead. You got to be out front. You have to be vocal. This is the time where not only do you communicate, you over communicate. You make sure people know that, hey, if the company's okay, articulate that it's okay. If the company's not okay, articulate the company's not okay, but here are the course of actions that we're going to take to make it okay, because people want to be led at this time. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, you got to make sure whatever your key initiatives are, if you need to pivot away from them, those are fine. But if, as an example, if D&I is important to the future of your company, if D&I is important to your customer base, those different types of things, you have to make sure that you keep that train rolling. You have to keep focus on that and make sure that your employees stay focused on that. This is the time to make sure that you talk about strategic focus. You have to read a lot right now. You really have to read and understand and have a point of view of where business is going, because people are asking the question right now, is work from home going to continue? When is the right time to let people come back to the office? When is the right time to let people go and travel? When is the right time to let salespeople go and visit clients? You're going to have to read and understand what's going on from a governmental standpoint and what's going on from a health standpoint. So it's real important to educate yourself, talk to other people, get opinions, understand how your culture is shifting because of this, and make sure that you indoctrinate that into the culture shift that's going to need to transpire, because this pandemic is not going to be over in the next couple months. This is going to have a profound impact on how business is done for the next 5, 10, 15 years, because this has been an absolute game changer.
And for one of the areas that, executives, and especially African American executives, you must have an embrace of the technology and use it to your advantage. Share with us some of your strategies in terms of making that technological transformation. You've been steeped in this area. Now you're, running, one of the leading, cloud and IT companies. How do you make that transition, and how do you go about making sure that you're fully vested in technology?
Yeah, so great question, Derek. So it's actually pretty interesting. Over the last, I would say, 5 years, there have been 3 trends that have really been driving technology shifts: globalization, mobilization, and virtualization. Globalization's been very real to people. Global supply chains, you want to have customers around the world is flat, all those different types of concepts. Mobilization, there isn't a person in this world that they don't have their smart device close to them and are ready to use. So globalization and mobilization have been very real to people. Virtualization, or the cloud, wasn't really real, even though it was very prevalent around. And one of the things that the pandemic has done has made it very real, be it Zoom, be it Microsoft Teams, be it WebEx, be it American Virtual Cloud Technologies. These are things that are now real around unified communications, contact center as a service, communication platform as a service. All of these things are real now to individuals. So you need to embrace them and understand how to use them. One of the things it was sort of funny, my previous CEO at AT&T, he literally said, if you do not have a good video camera, go buy one. Because if you're on the phone with a client, if you're on a video call with a client, they're judging you on how you look and how your technology is. And if I'm trying to sell you a technology solution and my bandwidth isn't good enough, my picture's going in and out, are you going to buy something from me? So all of these things are important, are becoming the new normal, because if you think about this relationship building that's going on right now, a lot of it is going to be done via video. So get comfortable with that real quick. Make sure you have the right type of gear that you wear on video calls. So all of those things where, hey, it's cool to be able to wear a golf shirt to school. My son wears it to school every day, but I've been wearing them to work every day and wear shorts. Realize you're being judged every minute of every day. So act accordingly and embrace these technology shifts.
So one of those areas that you're being checked on is your technological proficiency.
Now. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. People are testing, and what is the quote of 2020? Your mute is on. You're on mute. How many times has that happened? So you got to be very conscious. You got to be very conscious of when you're on mute and when you're not on mute. And literally, when you're not on mute, watch the conversations you're having. So all of those things, we have to embrace that and understand that's the new normal.
So, you've been giving great advice. Give me the 3 to 5 pointers for African American males, if, in terms of ascending to the CEO suite, if you will, and especially in the tech space.
Yeah, look, believe me, I wish I could tell everyone 3 to 5 things that's going to make it happen. These are 3 to 5 things that will hopefully better advantage or give you the right trajectory. First and foremost, results. Results matter. You have got to deliver at a high level on whatever your job is, and view that as table stakes. Do not expect the attaboys around just because if you're in sales, you're 120% a quota. Just if you're an accountant, just because you get, you're the best accountant, have to do the most audits. Those are things that you need to embrace and make sure that that's table stakes for you. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, find a culture that you fit in. It's very important that you can be your authentic self day in and day out. It makes it less stressful when you can be your authentic self at work. Thirdly, relationships. You have to build relationships with a multitude of people. Don't, if there is a brother who is a high level person, build a relationship with him or her. If there's a sister, build that relationship. But realize you got to have relationships with a lot of different people if you want to ascend in a company. So that's real important. Fourth thing I would say, I talked about this a few moments ago, have a strategic view of where things are going. You got to have a point of view and understand your company. You got to understand the industry. You got to understand global economics and understand the finances of your company. How does the top line move? How does the bottom line move? What are you doing to influence those types of things? And how can you accelerate it? Because if you're in a publicly traded company, if you could do something that's going to move earnings per share or move the stock price, you're going to be viewed in a much different way than somebody else who isn't doing those things. Last thing, and this is probably the most important thing for me, Derek, enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey. So, everybody's not going to be a CEO, but that doesn't mean you can't have a very, very impactful career. And if you're doing all the right things, having an impactful career, you're going to be surprised what people are going to tap you for and the opportunities that people are going to tap you for. It may be a CEO, it may be a CFO, one of my good friends, David Huntley, it may be the chief compliance officer of a Fortune 10 company. There are opportunities there that you can have a big impact on a company.
And just as yourself, be open to opportunities.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. 30 years, and now you've made a shift, to take a leadership role at another company.
Absolutely.
One thing I didn't ask you before is, eventually we'll get through this crisis, this pandemic. What do you envision as the opportunities in business in a post-COVID environment? Right now, you have your crystal ball. What are some areas that people should be focusing on that will present career and business opportunities?
Yeah, the amount of people that are going to work from home going forward, there's going to be a shift in the way that people need to be trained. So I would be thinking about, learning opportunities are one. Another thing that I would think about for everybody, and you talked about it a few moments ago, different type of technology jobs are going to become more prevalent. Coders, all those different types of folks who really know how to write code and drive different applications, create applications for individuals. There's going to be a lot of new things that need to transpire, especially that leverage video. So if you can learn things in that area, there might be new opportunities there. Now, this isn't an opportunity per se, but it's something that everyone should think about. You're going to have to learn to network differently. How do you set up network parties differently? Where I've seen now people setting up virtual dinner parties. How do you set up virtual mentoring circles? All those different types of things are going to need to be perfected, need to drive some innovation, need to drive things that are going to change the game. So those are some of the things that I would just encourage people to start thinking about.
So as you look at those new platforms, those new areas, what still is going to be true is that how you conduct yourself. And I know for you, integrity, the ability to get in harm's way, on occasion are paramount to you. What do you tell, young executives as they're moving up about, one, you talk about authenticity, but in terms of moving the needle, especially as we look at a new environment of race equity, renewed focus on race equity, how should they go about that process of fully advocating for diversity and inclusion in the corporate environment?
Yeah, first of all, be true to yourself. So make sure you're doing something that's consistent with your values. So that's first and foremost. You talked about integrity. You've heard me say it before, Derek. There's a quote by Alan Simpson, former senator from Wyoming. If you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. Make sure you are a person of integrity and bring that to the table, because you're going to have credibility when you talk. So that's very important when you're having these conversations about race and other things, that you're viewed as a person that's a straight shooter, that you're not trying to do this because it's an advantage for you. You want it to be seen as, hey, I'm trying to do the right thing for the overall business. So it's very important that integral integrity is very important from my vantage point.
In terms of wrapping up the conversation, I know we talked about a range of things. What is some other thoughts that you'd like to leave with our audience as they look at becoming the next CEO? Because one thing that is extremely important is that we populate the C-suite and the CEO seat with African American males. We've seen actually a diminution of CEOs at the top level of Fortune 500 companies and public companies such as you're leading. What thoughts would you like to leave our audience with in terms of, what you see as the future and what needs to happen in order to, increase the numbers?
Look, one thing I would just start with, and we didn't talk about this, Derek, dream big, dream big. So, I mean, if you can't, it isn't of, can you see yourself as a CEO or in the C-suite? Do you dream big enough to go there? And then you got to put in the work to do it. And putting in the work isn't just doing the work at your place of business. Are you taking care of yourself from a diet standpoint? Are you exercising? It's a holistic lifestyle that you're really going to have to lead if you want to do this thing. Another thing I would just encourage people to think about, again, be smart about your choices from a career standpoint and look for a culture where you could be your authentic self and bring yourself, best self to work every day. You have to be in a position and be in a place where you could be your true self in order to achieve the highest levels of achievement. So those are things that I would just encourage people to think about.
Okay. Well, Xavier, it was great talking to you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Derek.
And I think some of the advice that you provided will put people on the path of to the CEO suite, or at least to the path of rewarding careers and impactful careers.
Absolutely.
And, congratulations on your new position. Keep moving forward. This lunch and learn session, I know it's nourishing to our audience as much as the food that they put before them. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, man.
Okay.